I have discussions with people like, if something happens to my parents, I'm going to have to drop out of college. Because there's no way that I can sustain myself here. And then my sisters stay over there. I'm like, I have to leave immediately. So things like that. Like, I have discussions with people about, because we'll be discussing with these. And then they're like, oh, how scary is it for you? And I'm like, it's terrifying. And I'm like, even though I live in a sanctuary town. Do you know what a sanctuary town is?
There's this way.
So a sanctuary town is usually a town where they don't look into your immigration status. So you're all treated equally and everything like that. So my town is a sanctuary town. And then Santa Cruz is also a sanctuary town. But what happened was, I think not even like, it was like a month ago, ICE came to Santa Cruz. And they did a raid on gangsters. They told the Santa Cruz Police Department, they're like, we're here, but we're here to take your gangsters. And the Santa Cruz, and the police were like, that's completely fine. Like, as long as you don't get our citizens, you know, the gangsters is fine because, you know, they're causing all these things. And so ICE was like, cool. But the thing is, like, after they raided this gang thing, they were also taking civilians. And then Santa Cruz was like, we told you that you weren't supposed to take citizens. We gave you the, you know, the access for the gangsters, but why are you taking our citizens? And so Santa Cruz was like, you were lying to us, and, you know, why did you lie to us? I'm like, why are you taking our citizens? They're people from our town. And so ICE was like, we don't care, we do what I want. We do what we want. And so after that instance, I was really afraid because my Santa Cruz is a sanctuary town, and ICE was there. And I'm like, my town is like 10 minutes away from Santa Cruz. And so I was like very worried about my mom and my dad. And I'm just like, my mom not so much because she can easily, because she's like white passing. So I feel like she can easily go by. And then because she knows, and she's very cautious of what she does and stuff like that, I feel like I'm more comfortable with that. But my dad, I'm more a bit like, dude, you're gonna get yourself caught, because he's very reckless, and he does, and like, because they both drive, even though they have a license like that, it's terrifying too, because my dad likes to drink and stuff like that, so like, he can get caught, and so like, those things like that. But I'm just more worried because my mom was like the sole provider for the family. Like, she's the one who's helping me paying this stuff. She's the one who's trying to figure out how am I going to get back home. Like, who's going to take me from the airport to the house. So, like, she cooks, she cleans fridge. She goes to the meetings for my sisters. So, a lot of these things. And so, I'm like, it's terrifying to think about that. Because, like, my sister's 8. And it's terrible to think that she has to worry about, like, what if her mom has to go forever? What is she going to do? Or like her dad's like, what is she gonna do with both if she comes back to school one day and both her parents aren't there? What's gonna happen next? And so things like that. And so like it's really tough times, honestly. And then sometimes I feel like, why am I here? Because like I should be over there protecting my parents. But the thing is, like, the best thing to do is like continue with my education and wait until I'm 21 to naturalize my parents. Like, when you're 21, that's when you can naturalize them. But then again, I'm also scared of doing that because I'm not sure if, like, they might use that to find people, undocumented people, and use that for them and deport them, like, stuff like that. So, like, it's very tough times on that aspect, and it has thrown me off this whole semester, like, me just thinking about my parents, and, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, if that happens, like, I have to drop out of college. I'm like, I can't stay here. And then that whole cycle of poverty continues again. I'm like, it's so much for me accomplishing all these things, and then in the end, me not doing anything because, like, my parents aren't here, and I have to provide my sisters because I'm their sole provider. I'm 20. I'm their legal guardian if something happens to them. So, like, that's been a very tough thing for me. Like, that has been affecting me so much this semester, and I'm just like, how am I gonna function and things like that. So, like, there's definitely that problem. And so, like, when we talk about all these things about immigration, like, I'm so passionate. I'm like, people can't be illegal. I'm like, that's not a thing. Like, you can't make someone illegal. Like, they're undocumented, you want to say that, but they're not illegal. And it annoys me too, like, the stereotypes that we're lazy and stuff like that. But it frustrates me because I'm like, we're literally working in the fields. I'm like, the things that you guys don't want to do. And I'm like, we're breaking people are dying when they're working in the fields because it's like from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, and then very low wages, and then when it's hot over there, people get sunstroke, and like some people have died. Not too long ago, a pregnant woman died because she was out in the sun too much, And then and the man who was in charge of it did nothing. And so, like, there was marches against that. And they're like, why aren't you, like, protecting these people? So stuff like that. And it's, because it hits close to home a lot, because both my parents used to work in the fields, especially when they arrived, because that was the only job they could get. And then my mom continued working in the fields when she was pregnant, even though she was, like, had a huge stomach with me. She was still working in the fields. She was breaking her back and things like that, even though she knew the risk of what might happen if she stayed out too long, but she still did it. And then my dad continued until, like, after I was born. And then he's like, I can't be working in the fields, and, like, I'm not gonna see my kid a lot, and I can't really provide them, like, a good place. And so, like, because of that, my dad has, like, 2 or 3 jobs, and my mama can't really work because my mom doesn't have any social security, so she can't do that. And so we've always, like, my whole life, we lived in an apartment. And so it was always strange for me, like, people like, oh yeah, my house and stuff like that. And I was like, what's a house? I'm like, I never lived in a house before. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've always lived in an apartment. I'm like, it's a very small apartment, but I'm like, we get by fine and stuff like that. And then learning that, like, low income, we would get free lunches and stuff like that, because my parents didn't make the average income for a year. And so in a way, like, I always lived in a poorer situation, but, like, never fully realizing it until you're here, and then realize, like, hey, you're in poverty. And I was like, I'm not in poverty, because when we learn about poverty, we think people are, like, living in the streets and stuff like that. But, like, we barely make the poverty line, because my dad makes, like, barely $26,000 a year. And so, like, that's not even how much that's not even how tuition is here. And so that's crazy stuff to think about. And so me realizing that, like, I've lived in a ways considered poverty, even though I didn't feel like poverty. Like, I still had, like, well, people had, like, phones and computers and stuff like that. And maybe we did struggle with, like, with rent and things like that, but we weren't sent out of the street, or we weren't evacuated. I'm like, we didn't have that life. But me coming here, learning about, like, the systematic inequality that we're living in, and, like, how people are being treated because of this economic status and things like that, like, that definitely helped me a lot. Me become more passionate about, like, being a minority here, and me trying to fight that and things like that.
To some extent, I have quite similar experience too, because, like, all my life I have never felt that I lack anything. Like, we're not wealthy, of course. We're not very poor, but, like, of course we're not better off than many people. So, like, yeah, it's not until I came here that I realized, like, for you it's inequality among different ethnic groups. For me, it's inequality among different nations. So, yeah. But, like, somehow it's hard to think about it when you don't really feel as in my case. I don't feel poor.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting. Because, yeah, it was just so strange that, like, oh, so you're poor. And I'm like, I'm not poor. I thought I was, like, middle class. I'm like, we're middle class. I'm like, I don't live in a shoebox or stuff like the stereotype of being poor. And I'm like, no, but we're not rich, Mom. You don't have a mansion. Like, we're getting by quite fine, to be honest. I'm like, I have a computer. I'm like, we have a nice TV. We have couches and stuff. But they're like, like, your dad barely makes $26,000 a year. And, like, your mom doesn't work. Your dad has 2 jobs. I'm like, that's poor.
Yeah. And to some extent, actually, I think it's only after I came here that I realized how hard my parents had to work to provide to me. Because, like, part of my, like, the payment for my college actually came from the savings for their old age.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until recently. Somehow, the experience is similar to yours. I live in this bubble. I even live in this bubble after I came here.
Yeah.
But I think what's really interesting about, like, your story is how you define your identity as an intersectionality. Like, in sexuality, bisexuality, in religion, you say you are agnostic. And in your ethnic identity too, like this, you see yourself as somehow of a bridge, like someone who will bring those things together.
Yeah, and I think that's what, like, also helped a lot with, like, majoring in IS, because the whole diplomacy thing, like, being the bridge of things. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of doing that right now. And I'm like, why not major in something that I'm living in? And so, like, that helped a lot with, like, going with my major too. Like, so, like, IES has been, like, a fairly not, I want to say like freaking easy, but it helped a lot when we're learning about like all these different cultures and stuff like that, and then people are trying to like figure out, and I'm like, but the point is like you're supposed to sit back and listen to both sides, and then try to figure out like where they're coming from and where this person's coming from, and then try to find out the common ground, because there's always one similarity that you can usually based off from, and then build a foundation from that. And so like that has definitely like helped me a lot with like talking with family and with like friends about different things that we probably weren't exposed to when we were growing up. And so like I don't know, it's just really interesting how that evolution of things that's been going on, like that's just this rolling stone. And so I'm like, this is crazy stuff, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I learned so many things. I think.
Yeah.
Actually, like part of the stories you already told me before when we were working together, but like I don't know, and a lot of details on your
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I've helped you.
Yeah, I hope like because many of the stories, like the way I define culture, I think similar to yours. It's not just about ethnic culture.
Yeah.
So culture is part of our identity. It's just one domain of the way that we define this world. So like crossing culture is so many things. So I hope to collect like stories like this so I can have a broader, more diverse visualization about.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll send you the audio.
Sure, thank you.
Oh.
Here, I'll help you clean up.
Does this feel stressful or something?
No, it doesn't. I like talking about it.
Yeah. I like in-depth conversations.
Yeah.
Really. It's kind of my hobby.
Yeah,
Really.
it's nice. Yeah, I like having this. I have these conversations sometimes at night with my housemates. Like I'll be in the kitchen and then like, we'll be talking like some small thing, and they will be like go in depth about like I don't know something like feminism. We're like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.